Hey guys, today we're going to talk about a mopping robot that's quite unique and different from almost all the mopping robots out there, the SwitchBot S10. Let's find out more. Before we start the review, a quick history or trip down memory lane about mopping robots and robot vacuums. Robot vacuums have come a long way in the last couple of years, and if you remember the early days of robot vacuum cleaners, they were fairly dumb machines that would just bump around everything. You needed to clear the floor for them to get around, otherwise they're going to get stuck. As the technology progressed, we saw the implementation of LiDAR, which is the same technology that self-driving cars use, as well as cameras and AI to detect obstacles and not get stuck and not bump into things. Now, the whole idea of robot vacuums is the autonomous aspect of things, so that they do things autonomously without or with little intervention from your end. And that started with vacuuming your floors, but naturally that also progressed eventually to also mopping your floors, thereby ridding you of the manual task of mopping and vacuuming. And then in the early stages of that mopping components, the mopping ability was quite limited as well. It simply dragged a wet or moist microfiber cloth around, and you often had to remove the mopping component if you wanted to vacuum carpets, and then put the mopping component if you wanted to mop your floors. And you also had, of course, to refill it with water and empty the dirty water. So there was a lot of manual work over there. Naturally, as the technology progressed, and keeping in mind the whole objective of these robots is to be as autonomous as possible, there were more advancements done. That started with some advancements in the way the robots mop. So instead of just dragging a microfiber cloth, they've integrated components that do some vibrations or even sonic vibrations to mimic the action of scrubbing, in addition to another type of mopping robots, which have rotary mopping pads that rotate, also mimicking scrubbing. And to get rid of the hassle of removing and installing the mopping component, they came up with the idea of lifting those mops so that whenever the robot detects a carpet, it just lifts them up so it doesn't get the carpet wet. And to further the whole idea of autonomous operation, we then had base stations that had water tanks, a fresh water tank to refill the internal reservoir of the robot, but also a dirty water tank, and when the robot comes back to its base, a mechanism cleans and scrubs the microfiber and then deposits all the dirty water into a dirty water tank. And this, what I just said, describes almost all of the mopping robots today in the market. But there are two issues with that. The first one, and it's not a major issue, is the fact that there is still some level of manual intervention whereby you have to manually refill the water tank and empty the dirty water tank. Now, depending on how often you mop your floor and the size of your apartment or your house, you might not have to do it very often, but then there's the problem that often the dirty water tank starts to develop odors and starts to smell. And the SwitchBot S10 solves exactly that problem by having a water station that you can hook up to your water mains, but also to your drainage. Thus, by completely eliminating the need of refilling fresh water and emptying dirty water, and of course, having to deal with the smell of that dirty water tank. So that's one issue. The second, and in my opinion, the more major issue is, despite us progressing a lot over the years with the mopping aspect of things, it remained in essence dragging a microfiber cloth across your floors. And yes, the rotation of the rotary ones or even the sonic vibrations to some degree mimic scrubbing, so they're effective at that point, but they're still dragging a dirty microfiber across your floors. And yes, some of them can return the robot back to the base to clean it, but it's not ideal. There are limits to how much water the microfiber can absorb, and then when it does get dirty, and if you're still cleaning the house with that, you're dragging all the dirt, all the mess around your floors, which is counterintuitive and beats the whole point of these robots. Now, a side note over here, I've done a lot of reviews on the channel on cordless wet and dry vacuums, and the concept of these wet and dry vacuums is that there's a rotating brush that's constantly being fed with water, but then as the brush is cleaning your floors, it's at the same time sucking all the dirty water and depositing that in a dirty water tank. And I've always wondered how come no one has implemented this method of mopping into robots up until now. And here again, the SwitchBot S10 solves that problem by implementing the exact same methodology these wet and dry vacuums work on, having a rotating brush that is constantly being fed with fresh water and a scraper that sits on top that is constantly sucking out all the dirty water and depositing it in a reservoir. Therefore, the brush is always cleaning with fresh water, but it's also self-cleaning all the time, so you're never really mopping your floors with a dirty microfiber. Genius. So when SwitchBot reached out asking if I'd like to review their SwitchBot S10, I took a look at what the robot had to offer, and obviously I said yes because I was very intrigued. And yes, this is a sponsored video. SwitchBot did send me the robot for free. However, this did not impact my review, which remains objective and unbiased. So let's take a look at the main features of the SwitchBot S10. It comes with a 2-station system. There's the auto empty station, which is also the drying station, and this has a dust bag that can hold dust up to 90 days. And then there's of course the water station, and it comes with a lot of different attachments for you to be able to install it in a lot of different places, like under your sink or near a dishwasher or a washing machine or even the toilet. The nice thing about the water station is that it's battery operated, so that means you don't need to have an electrical outlet near wherever you want to install it, which gives you even more options of where to install it. Now, in case for whatever reason you cannot hook up the water station to your water mains directly, they also have external water tanks, which you can hook up to. Another nice thing that the station has is this over here, which is an automatic cleaning solution dispenser. So you can fill it up with cleaning solution, and this can last up to 90 days. And the robot is automatically going to mix the correct ratio of the cleaning solution with water when it refills itself. The robot itself has LiDAR, of course, and also AI recognition. So it recognizes many common objects around the house, such as wires and shoes and even scales, which I was surprised about. And it also has automatic LED lights that turn on automatically if the robot is cleaning under your bed or in a poorly lit area to help it see better. And the brush is an anti-hair tangle brush, so it limits the amount of tangled hair, and we'll also see that in a test later on. Now let's talk about one of the highlights of this robot, which is the automatic mopping. As with other high-end mopping robots in the market today, this has the ability to lift itself up if it detects carpets so that it does not get them wet. And then when it is cleaning your floors, the roll is cleaning itself at 300 times a minute to ensure, as I said earlier, that it's always clean. And we'll see that in a cleaning test in just a bit. It also has the drying component, so when the robot returns to its base to charge, the dock is also going to dry that roller brush so that it does not develop bad odors. Now on the product page, they say it dries in 3 hours, but the drying time is something you can customize in the app, and you can go as little as 1 hour, but I found that it takes about an hour and a half to dry the brush completely. So I put it at 2 hours instead of 3 hours, and after 2 hours, the brush is completely dry. They also advertise drying at 50 degrees Celsius, and I actually tested that, and as you can see, it actually is 50 degrees Celsius. Now, one small note over here, the drying part is a little bit louder than other vacuums that I tested. Don't get me wrong, it's not loud, but louder. So right in front of it, it's around 45 decibels, but if you go at around 2 meters, it's about 40 decibels. Now, unless you're sitting in the same room and it's dead silent, you probably will not hear this drying. Even when I had the robot drying right behind me, if I had my window open, and there was no way I was going to hear it, but just something for you to consider. As long as you're not going to be sitting right next to it, the drying part should be fairly silent. So now let's take a look at the app and what options we have there. Of course, the first time around, the robot is going to use the LiDAR sensors. It's going to map your house, and you're going to have the option to name the rooms, merge the rooms, or separate them. Let me show you a couple of the settings that you can play around with. You can of course create a schedule, so you can add a schedule on when you want the robot to clean your house. And you can specify the time, the dates, the days, and if you want a particular room or the full house, and how many times you want it to be clean, whether you want to vacuum and mop or vacuum only. And if you chose vacuum and mop, do you want to clean the house once or twice? You can also set the suction power from quiet to standard, strong, or maximum, and the amount of water that the robot uses, either moist or wet. Under carpet cleaning, you can also turn on carpet mode, which means when the robot detects carpet, it's going to boost the suction power to make sure it's cleaning your carpets thoroughly. And you can also tell the robot to either adapt the carpets, which means it's going to retract the mop so that it doesn't get the carpets wet, or you can tell it to avoid carpets, which means it's not going to go over carpets at all. And you can also turn on the AI obstacle avoidance, and you can set it to either standard or agile. And this depends on how thorough you want it to clean versus how much you want it to avoid obstacles. So if you put it on standard, it's going to prioritize avoiding obstacles, which means it might miss some spots. Or you can set it on agile, which means it's going to try to be more thorough in its cleaning, but it might miss some of the obstacles. You can also set auto resume cleaning to on, which means if it runs out of juice in the middle of a cleaning session, it's going to go back to the base, charge itself up, and then resume cleaning from where it left off when it has sufficient power. And you can also turn on reduced collision mode, which means that the robot will again prioritize not colliding with things, which comes at the expense of not being able to clean corners and edges as thoroughly. And under cloud services, of course, there's Google Assistant, Alexa, F10 series shortcuts. So if you want to use any of the virtual assistants, you can configure them over here. Now, if we go back to the main screen, you can, of course, clean the full house. You can specify any rooms that you want to clean, or, of course, you can add an area that you want to clean and adjust it on the map accordingly. And under functions, you can manually ask the robot to go back to its base to recharge or to wash the mop, which when you click on, it's going to go to the water station and deep clean the mop. And under settings, this is where you can change the dust collection frequency from default, which is emptying the dust after each task, or to 15 or 20 minutes. But you can also configure if you want auto cleaning to be turned on, or if you want to dampen the mop, which means before each one, the robot would go to the water station to refill and dampen the mop. And lastly, this is where you can also toggle on or off the automatic drying of the mop and configure the drying time from 1 hour all the way to 8 hours. Now let's see a few of the cleaning tests that I did. Starting with the test I was most excited about, I drizzled some ketchup on the floor and I sent the robot to clean that. And I wouldn't recommend you go over such a mess with the robot, but rather wipe it with some paper towel. But I was really curious to see how effective the cleaning was. So in the name of science, I did that. And as you can see, instead of having ketchup smudges all over the floor, there were actually none. The mop did a really good job at just cleaning the ketchup off of the floor. And the more interesting bit, I removed the roller brush right after it cleaned the ketchup. And take a look at that. There's absolutely no sign of ketchup on the roller brush, which is pretty impressive. Next up, I poured some coffee on the floor and let it dry over 12 hours. But also, I wanted to do a stress test with the ketchup as well and let that dry over 12 hours. Now, this is a stress test. Ketchup that's dried over 12 hours is very difficult to remove, even if you're scrubbing it with your hands. But as you can see, it had no issue removing all the coffee stains and the ketchup as well, but that took a lot of different tries. I had to send the robot multiple times for it to clean the ketchup. And at one point I just gave up sending it. So I used my wet and dry stick vacuum to remove that. And as you can see, even with that, it took many, many passes for it to get the ketchup out. So again, this was a stress test, but taking a look again at the roller brush after this entire cleaning session, and it was perfectly clean with no visible stains. Once the cleaning session was done, the robot automatically finds its water station, goes there, empties the dirty water tank, refills the fresh one, and starts deep cleaning the brush roll again so that it makes sure that there's absolutely no dirt, no stains, no nothing on the brush roll. For this test, as you can see, I used the external water tanks instead of the drainage so that I can show you the extracted water after cleaning and look at that water and look at what the robot was able to extract while cleaning that kitchen floor. And then when it's done, it goes back to its home base, it empties the dust into the dust bag, and it starts drying the brush roll. Now, to test the anti-hair tangle brush, I did put some long hair strands on the floor. And again, this was a stress test because I put a lot of hair and also the strands were quite long. And as you can see, for the most part, there was very little hair that was tangled on the brush. There were some long strands stuck on the side brush, but nothing major. And cleaning this was quite easy. I also did an obstacle course for the robot to see how well it navigated around obstacles and and also how good the AI detection is. I put some socks, I put a charging cable, and I put feces in case you have pets around the house. And the robot had no problem detecting all of them, and it even recognized that the cable is a cable and that the feces are actually feces, which was quite interesting. So generally the LiDAR and the navigation was quite good. It did from time to time bump a little bit into a few things like the chair foot, but nothing major at all. I've sent it out on dozens and dozens of cleaning runs. It never got stuck anywhere, so that's good. So here are my thoughts on the SwitchBot S10. I think it's a very capable product, and here I have to go back to those two unique points that I talked about, the water station and the mopping ability, and I think it excels at both of them. The fact that there's a water station that you can install anywhere you have water inlet and drainage, and that it also has an auto-dispensing tank for the cleaning solution, means really this robot is as hands-off as can be today. All you really have to do is replace the dust bag, and that can last up to 3 months. So it's really hands-off, and it works. And if at any point the robot runs out of clean water, or if the dirty water tank is full, it's going to go back to that water station halfway through that cleaning run, empty itself, refill itself, and then go back and continue cleaning. And this has worked flawlessly in the many dozen runs that I've sent the robot out on. So the water station, very happy with that. And also the mopping, I'm extremely impressed. And I think this is how all mopping robots should be. The fact that the mopping brush is constantly being fed fresh water, but also scraping all the dirty water, means that I'm always cleaning my floors with fresh water, and the roller brush is always clean. So I was very happy as well, obviously, with the mopping performance. So if you're looking for a vacuum robot that also mops your floor, I think you can't go wrong with the SwitchBot S10, especially with its mopping capabilities. I will put links in the description to the product page. Make sure to check those links out to see the price at the moment you're watching this. I do know there's a lot of promotional offers every now and then that can be quite substantial. So make sure to check the links in the description to get the latest price at the time you're watching this. These are affiliate links, so if you do decide to purchase the product, I would appreciate if you would go through these links. I may earn some commission on some purchases at no extra cost to you. This will greatly help support the channel. That's all for me. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comment section. And as always, if you liked the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, as this encourages me to continue producing content. Until next time, cheers.